Okay, so picture this. You and your friends are stranded. I mean, properly stranded, on a deserted island somewhere out in the Pacific Ocean. Your only way out? You gotta build a functional sailboat using only what you can find. Bamboo, trash, maybe some old barrels that washed ashore. Well, that was the very real, very insane challenge MrBeast and his crew set for themselves. Build a boat and sail it for miles across the open ocean to another island.
Right from the very beginning, the stakes were made crystal clear. This wasn't just some fun challenge. It was a hardcore survival test. And this one line, said right at the start of it all, it really sets the tone for the entire grueling journey they're about to face.
MrBeast himself said this was the big question behind the whole idea. It's that classic thought experiment, right? Only they decided to actually live it. So as we break this all down, keep that in your head. If it were you, with the same odds, how do you think you'd do? So let's kick things off with just how massive this task really was. The gap between what they needed to accomplish and what they were actually, capable of doing, it was a canyon.
I mean, what's so fascinating here is just the sheer mismatch. On one side, you have this monumental goal, build a working sailboat and then navigate the open sea. And on the other side, a group of YouTubers who, when they're asked if they've ever sailed before, it's just a unanimous no. These are the same guys who struggled just to put together a basic shelter. So the odds, to put it mildly, were not exactly in their favor.
And it wasn't just about the boat either. The island itself was basically trying to get them. They were warned about all sorts of venomous snakes and spiders just hanging out in the jungle, but honestly, the most immediate threat was just the environment. That oppressive heat was giving them tunnel vision, making them feel like they were about to pass out, all while they're trying to ration a super limited supply of water.
Okay, so this is Hassie. He's the one guy on the team with some real experience, and this quote from him, it's absolutely crucial. Before they even started building, he laid out the one thing they could never ever control, Mother Nature. He's basically saying this isn't just about how hard they work, it's a race against the wind and, most importantly, the tide. So, with those impossible odds stacked against them, where do you even start? Let's get into how their ingenuity and just sheer determination started to turn this whole thing around, one piece of scavenged junk at a time. So they didn't just start building like crazy. Their process was actually pretty smart and methodical. It all started with this tiny little prototype made out of sticks, just to see if the design would even work. Then came the really hard part, hauling bamboo out of the jungle and walking for miles along the beach looking for useful trash. The big score was finding these sealed barrels. They would trap air inside, right? Which provides the buoyancy to keep the whole heavy wooden frame from sinking. And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the physical cost of all this. Finding one single good barrel after hours of searching in that crazy heat was a huge win, but man, it pushed them to their absolute limits. Every single bit of progress was paid for with pure exhaustion. And this right here was the turning point. After days of just back-breaking work, they finally dragged the main frame of the raft into the water. And it floated. You could literally see the change in their whole attitude. That impossible goal suddenly felt real. For the very first time, escape seemed like something they could actually pull off. So, with their boat finally built and hope running high, they set sail. But as they were about to find out, building the raft, that was only half the battle. Now they had to deal with the unforgiving open ocean. Their trip was this nearly 12-hour epic of incredible highs and devastating lows. You can see it laid out here. They start off strong, they get a nice push from the outgoing tide, but by hour 2, the brutal reality of paddling nonstop really starts to sink in. And look here, by hour 6, they are just physically spent. Then, a miracle happens. The tide shifts and the current starts pushing them toward the island. It gives them this incredible second wind, right before one last, final, devastating twist.
The entire journey was just a constant struggle. It wasn't just about moving forward. It was a non-stop battle against things going wrong. A paddle snaps in half. A critical piece of the rudder just falls into the ocean. The wind keeps spinning them in circles. And on top of all that, people are getting seasick, they're exhausted. It was just one thing after another. Early on, they were looking at more than 5 miles to go. Imagine watching the island you started on just disappear behind you, while the island you're trying to get to is still just a tiny speck on the horizon. That really hammers home the soul-crushing scale of what they were attempting. This little back and forth, it's part complaint, part dark humor, but it perfectly captures how they felt after hours and hours of paddling. They were running on empty. Their bodies were just done. The physical burnout was absolutely complete. But they just kept going. After hours of struggle, against all the odds, they managed to close that massive gap until they were just one single mile away. You can feel the hope in that moment. They were so close to actually pulling this off. They were in the home stretch. Victory was literally right there in front of them. But this is where the story takes its final, absolutely heartbreaking turn. This is how close they got. Half a mile. After building a boat out of trash and paddling for 11 straight hours, they were close enough to swim. The island was right there. And then it happened. Haas's warning from the very beginning came true. The tide, that massive, powerful movement of ocean water, it shifted. The same current that had been helping them, pushing them towards the island, completely reversed course, and it became this unstoppable force just dragging them away back out to sea. And that's really the crucial thing to understand here. They didn't fail because they gave up. They were just beaten by something they had absolutely no control over. It was a race against the clock, and the clock was the entire Pacific Ocean. Their time just ran out. In that moment, right after, you can just feel the crushing weight of it all. The pure disbelief and sadness of getting so incredibly close, only to have it ripped away at the very, very end. And so, that brings us back to our original question. Could a bunch of friends with zero experience build a boat and actually escape a deserted island? Well, despite this incredible display of ingenuity and sheer will, the definitive answer was, nope, they did not make it.
But that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. They failed the challenge, that's true, but they never ever gave up. They solved problems, they built something from nothing, they paddled until their bodies just quit on them, and they fought until the ocean literally pulled them away. And it makes you wonder, when you push the limits this far, what's the real difference between failure and just being beaten?